začínají modeláři pořadové číslo 96. Od mikrofonu vás zdraví Viktor.
A taky Banán, krásný dobrý večer.
A my jsme moc rádi, že jsme dospěli do momentu, který jsme vám vlastně docela dlouho slibovali nebo avizovali, a sice do momentu, kdy naším hostem je muzikant ze zahraniční kapely Na turné, takřka nebývalý úkaz minulých let. Hostem dnešních modelářů je hudebník, o kterém jsme hodně mluvili. Znáte ho z kapel Botch, These Arms Are Snakes, Sumak samozřejmě, taky sólového projektu Torment and Glory a v prvé řadě z kapely, která minulý týden zahrála v Praze, Russian Circles. Naším hostem je Banáne.
Naším hostem je Brian Cook. Hi Brian, welcome in the Radio Wave.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hello.
It's great that live music is finally happening. When I was looking at the promo pics you had for Torment and Glory, your solo project, I had the feeling that they have like a farmer's vibe almost. Would you say that the pandemic made you settle down somehow?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess I've always lived in cities, but you know, my family all kind of comes from more rural areas, and I've always enjoyed the outdoors and you know, the bucolic lifestyle. So with COVID, it was kind of, you know, everyone was already sort of isolated, and the perks of urban living weren't really available. So yeah, I think maybe on some level it was embracing the rural lifestyle.
My doplníme ještě to, že ten rozhovor budeme vést samozřejmě v angličtině, ale zároveň vám budeme s Banánem tlumočit, respektive se budeme pokoušet převést jádro toho, o čem se tady bavíme, kdybyste náhodou angličtinu tolik nevládli. Takže do toho můžeme rovnou jít. A první otázka mířila k tomu, že promo fotografie, které Brian udělal ke svému solovému projektu Torment and Glory, mají takový až jako vesnický farmářský vibe, a ptal jsem se na to, jestli vlastně ta pandemická situace ho posunula nebo nějakým způsobem donutila, aby se vlastně usadil. A Brian na to říká, že vlastně byl vždycky jako, že byl jako městský kluk, typ, ale vlastně v té pandemické situaci některé ty kratochvíle nebo ty možnosti toho vyžití vlastně byly jako jiné, takže vlastně ty úniky do těch vesnických prostor, řekněme, nebo něco takového tam byly.
A že si to vlastně užíval a říkal také, že jeho rodina vlastně je pořád částečně usazena vlastně spíš na venkově a že se malinko trošičku vlastně vrátil zpátky v určitém ohledu a že ten feeling vlastně vesnický nebo rurální, tak přeci jenom s tím covidem byl u něj trošičku víc akcentován zase, takže se to tam určitě nějakým způsobem odrazilo.
Having said this, you are back on the road with Russian Circles. Despite not having any new music with the band, the tour was announced some 2 years ago. It's happening now. Did you ever consider other options for the tour, maybe postponing it until there is new music, or was it ever an issue for you?
Yeah, it was a bit of a tough call because originally we were coming to Europe to tour on a new album that had come out at the end of 2019, and then, you know, we didn't necessarily cancel it. We just decided we were going to reschedule because back in March of 2020, it's like, oh, this will be over by the fall. You know, we'll come back in September, and then it was like, oh, all right, we'll be back March 2021, and then it was just like, okay.
And in between, what happened that you have a new record already, right?
Yeah, you know, we were trying to stay busy, so we were writing songs, and you know, I mean, we rebooked this tour 3 or 4 times, and in that process, wrote a new album, recorded a new album, and now the new album is supposed to be out at the end of the summer, and so it feels a little funny because we're touring on technically the new record, even though the new record is now 2.5 years old. So I don't know.
Yeah. So you're feeling like you are happy it's happening, right? But you have maybe kind of like mixed feelings that you are not really touring with the new album because the new album is already recorded.
Yeah.
Are you excited to play the songs live again?
Definitely excited. I think there's 2 mindsets, and one's just, you know, we're really excited to be back out on tour and to play again, and it's there's something comforting about playing old songs that we're comfortable with, just because, you know, we're out of shape. We just sat around watching TV and eating potato chips for 2 years. So it's, you know, it's relearning how to tour and all that. But on the flip side, now all the songs feel old. So, you know, we have new songs that are way more exciting for us, but we don't want to play all those now. So we're only playing one new one on this tour, but, you know, and, you know, we figure people that like our band, you know, want to see songs off the last record. So we're trying to make everyone happy.
Okay.
Sečteno, podtrženo, Russian Circles vyráží na turné vlastně po 2 letech, co ho odkládali. Původně si mysleli, že to z toho března 2020 přeloží na podzim, potom zase na jaro 21, pak zase na podzim 21, ale nakonec vyrazili s deskou, která je vlastně z roku 2019, ale mezi tím nahráli desku novou, která vyjde na konci letošního léta. Ale to turné je pořád koncipované jako turné k té předchozí desce, která je vlastně pořád a k té nové desce, ze které budou hrát ale jenom jednu skladbu, nebo které hrají jenom jednu skladbu na tom turné. Speaking of touring, Russian Circles are known as one of the nicest people to be on tour or around with. I've been hearing that from so many bands. Are there any like
so many Thomases?
Yeah.
Are there any like unwritten rules that you try to follow when you are touring?
Well, you know, be nice, I guess. I mean, it's flattering to hear we're considered nice people. I don't think I don't know. I'm sure there are people who think we've been jerks to them, so I feel kind of weird about whatever reputation we might have, but
it would be strange if they weren't such people. I mean, that would be a weird signal.
Oh, yeah. Well, everyone has bad days, so I'm sure there's probably some sound engineer out there who's like, oh, Russian Circles, man, they were grumpy. Like, you know. But, I don't know, everyone's working together. There's no reason to ever be rude to someone on purpose. So, you know, I know, you know, there's the whole rock star attitude that some bands have, but I think we just have been at this for so long, and we're just sort of used to everyone being, you know, everyone's a part of making the evening happen. So there's not really room to have a bad attitude.
Talking about this, you did, like some month ago in the States, you did like some really big tours, like really like arena tours, with the bigger bands. So how it was for you? It was completely different experience than the shows for like, I don't know, 500 people.
Yeah,
was it tough for you at some level?
It was very different. We went out with System of a Down and Korn, and it was kind of unexpected because originally we had been invited to play this sort of festival situation in LA with those bands and Faith No More and Helmet, and we had all grown up listening to Faith No More and Helmet, so we were like, oh, this will be exciting. And then they added more shows with Faith No More, and we were really excited because, again, we grew up listening to those records, and then Faith No More had to cancel, and then it was like, oh, now we're out on tour with bands that we don't really know and we have neither a personal relationship or a relationship as listeners, just because that stuff, you know, kind of came after we had already gotten into hardcore and, you know, like Chicago indie rock stuff. So we weren't the demographic for that music. So it was a weird situation, but I think sometimes, you know, after touring for however many years, it can feel like Groundhog's Day where you're doing the same thing over and over again, and that's fine. But it's also kind of nice when you get to do new things, like you get to tour to new places or, you know, play to new audiences. So for us, it was like, well, we've never played an arena. Let's see how that goes. We had no expectations. We weren't thinking it was going to be our big break. We were just sort of like, oh yeah, we'll play in front of maybe 1,000 people in a 20,000 capacity arena, but that's okay because, you know, we'll be taking, like, it was a good deal for us, and
New experience.
It was a new experience, and we were kind of like, let's just go and see what it looks like, and if it's terrible, like we'll have funny stories, and it was strange, but people were very nice to us. I think we're still a little uncertain as to why we were invited to play these shows, but everyone was very friendly and helpful, and it was definitely an experience, but probably not something we'll ever do again. But that's okay.
So how many people did you end up playing to? You mentioned 1,000 and 20,000 people arenas.
It kind of varied. Most of the places were 10,000 to 20,000 capacity things, and some shows. I don't want to sound like I'm gossiping here, but there's definitely some organizational issues with shows on that scale. There's just so many people working, and sometimes things ran on schedule and sometimes they didn't. And so sometimes we played like right as they were opening the doors, and then so you played 1,000 people in a really big arena. But other times when things were running on schedule, it was pretty full, like maybe not full capacity, but it still looked pretty cool. Yeah. So, yeah.
Tak si to možná pojďme shrnout jenom v rychlosti, než si pustíme další hudbu. Co byla ta původní otázka? Otázka byla, že Russian Circus mají renomé hrozně milých lidí a parťáků na turné, na což Brian reagoval tím, že je lichotivé, pokud to tak lidi vnímají, ale že určitě měli taky své špatné dny a že se najdou zvukaři.
Určitě nějaký zvukaři, který budou říkat, že Russian Circus byli nepříjemný.
A pak jsme se vlastně dostali k tomu, že jeli v uplynulých měsících ve státech vlastně na své poměry nečekané turné s kapelami jako System of a Down, Korn, předtím Fate No More a Helmet, a v souvislosti s tím vlastně Brian zmiňoval, že se měnila ten počet lidí vlastně, pro které hráli v těch vlastně opravdu těch vlastně stadionových lokacích.
A že se vlastně trošičku i měnily ty kapely, s kterými původně jakoby vlastně měli ty turné zabukovány, že on říkal, že vlastně do toho šli hlavně kvůli Fate No More, který to nakonec, protože vlastně vyrostli na jejich muzice a jsou fanoušci Fate No More, a vlastně i Helmet, který měli hrát taky na nějakém tom původním festivalu, kvůli kterému to celé vzniklo, ale že potom se vlastně stalo to, že Fate No More museli kvůli zdravotním důvodům Mikea Petnat turné zrušit, a nakonec oni najednou skončili na turné ze System of the Down a Korn, což je vlastně jsou pro ně kapely, ke kterým ten fanouškovský vztah jako k Fate No More jakoby nemají, ale že to pro ně byla rozhodně jako velmi, velmi zajímavá zkušenost těch velkých,
která už se zřejmě nebude opakovat. A my teď zjistíme vlastně, jakým způsobem dával dohromady ten playlist a proč vybral to, co vybral, protože to je hodně rozmanitá záležitost. So Brian, would you mind discussing which ideas were behind the playlist that you put together for us, because it's fairly varied. We started with Nova Express, now Cadaveric Fumes. Are these all your favorites?
It's just stuff I've been listening to recently, and I wasn't quite sure what the normal format for the show was, and it's like, well, I like a lot of different stuff, so I'll pick out a few different styles. And, I like Nova Express because it's kind of in that krautrock vein, even though they're a more contemporary band. I think that record's was originally recorded in the early 2000s, but it sounds like, they could have been contemporaries with Noi or Can or Amon Duel 2 or something. So I like that stuff. And then Cadaveric Fumes, I'm a big fan of a lot of the contemporary old school death metal stuff that's come out recently. I've always liked death metal, but I think I kind of checked out of a lot of that stuff in recent years just because it was getting so technical and polished and overproduced and mechanical sounding, and it's like bands suddenly started getting gross and gnarly and sounding like actual raw live bands again, and that made me excited. So I picked Cadaveric Fumes.
Right. Takže je to vlastně jednoduché. Vybral věci, které v poslední době poslouchá, které se mu líbí. V případě Nova Express to je ten krautový zvuk, který sice je od současné kapely, ta deska je někdy z počátku minulé dekády, ale zní jako něco, co mohlo vzniknout v době, kdy byly na vrcholu Can a podobné kapely. A pokud jde o Cadaveric Fumes, tak tady zase demonstruje Brianovu zálibu v old school death metalu, respektive v současných kapelách, které ho hrají, a respektive v kapelách, které hrají nyní old school death metal, ale takový ten špinavý, ne ten přeprodukovaný, což je to, co ho přitáhlo k Cadaveric Fumes. Let's go back to your bands.
Okay.
Russian Circles is naturally an instrumental band, but this is a field where often musicians tend to display their virtuosity and the music sort of lacks content, or that's how I feel about that. What is your perspective on instrumental rock, heavy guitar music in general?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we didn't set out to be an instrumental band. I mean, I wasn't even in the band originally. I came on after their first record, but you know, as Mike and Dave talk about it, they just wanted to start a band, and you know, the idea.
They didn't find a singer.
Yeah, but then they're just kind of, you know, they originally had like a guy doing noise at the same time too, and it was like, well, you know, once the songs fall in place, then, you know, you can kind of figure out the whole rest of the deal. And, you know, I think it kind of quickly became apparent to them that there wasn't really a vocal style that would fit really well, or at least if they, you know, if they got a guy that just screamed or like did Cookie Monster vocals or whatever, it would kind of force them to play a certain way. And if they got someone that was an actual singer, then it might discourage them from exploring more dissonant or heavy stuff that they wanted to explore. And it just became easier to stay instrumental. And, you know, I like a lot of I mean, most of the music I listen to, I think probably has vocals in it, but so often it does feel like the music that I like is really centered around instrumentation, and vocals are kind of the afterthought. So we just skipped that part of the equation.
Mm. So does it mean that you listen to the bands that are sort of equated with showing off the instrumental skills, like prog rock bands? Is that something that you listen to as well, or?
I mean, I like a lot of prog rock, mainly like the old classic stuff. You know, I love like Yes and Genesis and King Crimson and Magma and things like that. As far as like current instrumental bands, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I like, but it's usually not stuff that's adjacent to what we do. I tend to be more fond of, you know, things like Nova Express or something where it's kind of dreamy and psychedelic, or, you know, just more abrasive and dissonant, kind of across the spectrum. But I think like a lot of artists, I tend not to listen to things that sound too much like what I already do, because it feels like not as magical on some level. You know, you kind of know how that music happens, so it's like, wow, there's no secret there. You know, I know the mystery behind it, so I'd rather listen to things that activate my brain and seem kind of new and unusual to me.
Where you see the mystery, but you don't know what's the mystery, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Tak jo, tak ta otázka vlastně byla, že spousta instrumentálních kapel vlastně přistupuje k té hudbě tak, že dávají na obdiv tu svoji instrumentalitu, a tak se Viktor ptal Briana, jak vlastně oni přistupují k té instrumentální hudbě, kterou Russian Circles dělají jako čistě instrumentální kapela. A Brian říkal, že vlastně úplně neví, jako co bylo vlastně úplně na začátku té kapely, protože do kapely přišel až potom, co nahrála první desku, a že vlastně to si myslí dokonce, že to ani nebyl původně plán, že byl Russian Circles instrumentální kapela, ale že to potom nějak prostě tak dopadlo, víceméně trošičku samovolně, ale že on sám má rád vlastně instrumentální kapely, že má rád spoustu progrokových kapel, těch klasických vlastně progrokových kapel, ale také mluvil o tom, že nemusí úplně poslouchat kapely, které hrají muziku, jakou on sám hraje, protože má pocit, že už tam vlastně není potom pro něj to kouzlo, které on v muzice hledá. Je to tak, Viktore?
A když už poslouchá ty instrumentální kapely, tak spíše nějaké drsnější, než ty přesně s tou předvádivou instrumentací. Tak. Sumac is another of your current active bands. The most recent bit you did was the Two Beast single for Sub Pop. What's happening in the Sumac camp? A band that I'm always in awe of in terms of you guys making the heaviest music of your lives at this stage.
Yeah, we're kind of figuring out the next step, because we had a record come out during COVID, and so we're just starting to play that out. And Sumac's kind of an interesting band because a lot of what we do is improvised in free form. So, there's definitely parts of the material that's very deliberate and structured and, happens the same way every night. But a lot of it is, composed on the spot and changes from night to night. So, we've just started playing on the new record. We just did a West Coast tour. We'll be going out on the East Coast in August, and I think we'll be coming to Europe in October. And there is a reissue of Two Beasts coming out. Two Beasts originally came out as a Sub Pop single of the month, but the song is about 20 minutes long, and as audiophiles might know, 7 inches only can hold about 12 minutes of music total. So about 8 minutes of the song got lopped off for the 7-inch. So it's going to be reissued as a one-sided LP with the full song.
All right.
And I think we have another live collaboration album with the Japanese artist Keiji Haino coming out either later this year or early next year. So there's kind of a lot.
There's all great news, including the upcoming European shows. And Keiji Haino and improvisation, there's a combination that I can't resist asking more about.
Victor was really excited to ask about Keiji Haino.
Okay, ask away.
No, what I'm aiming at is whether you can describe basically what you learned from him in terms of improvisation, because he's a master of that. He's a guy capable of coming up with incredible sounds in different circumstances, locations, aesthetics, and the albums that you did together. And there's more, which is obviously great news. Yeah. What is the lesson there? What did you learn from Keiji Haino?
As you said, he's a master of that world. And we've done 3 sessions with him. We did a studio session, and then we've done 2 live shows. And we did the studio session first, and that was really exciting and a learning experience because, we didn't know what was going to happen. We had never met him before. There'd been a little bit of correspondence, but we basically met at the studio and sat down and hit record. And
Does he speak English? Sorry.
Very little.
Oh, okay.
So he had a translator. So so that was kind of intimidating, but he knows what he does, and he is a very friendly person and a fun person to work with. But then we did a show with him in Tokyo, and it was kind of terrifying because all of a sudden you weren't in the contained environment of a studio. You're in a live show, and Sumac had just done a full set. So we were all in that headspace of like playing a Sumac show. And then all of a sudden you're collaborating with someone when, you don't have the monitor set up for it and all this. So you're trying to play off of each other, but you can't necessarily hear one another. So it was kind of a tough one. And I think we all walked away from that, feeling like, oh, we could have done better. But then we did a show with him right before COVID in Vancouver that had a better stage setup that we were all comfortable with. And that felt really good and was really exciting. And we kind of did that show in a way where Keiji Haino would kind of direct us. So he's like, okay, you two are going to start and we'll see what happens. And and then it just kind of happened and it was exciting.
Did he give you feedback for the Tokyo show that you say didn't go as well as you would have wanted to?
We didn't really talk about it afterwards. I think everyone was kind of just, it's never great to walk off stage and be critical. It's better to stew on it for a little bit. But when we reconnected in Canada, he was like, I did not like that show. And it's like, cool. We didn't like it either. It was weird. So, we had a lot more of a conversation beforehand, and it was kind of nice because we got to talk about art and collaborating and what we all wanted out of the experience.
And it all led to the show, which was much better. That's perfect.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Tak se to pojďme v rychlosti shrnout, než si pustíme další hudbu. Tenhle blok jsme věnovali kapele Sumak, ve které Brian taky hraje a které nedávno, nebo už to je nějaký rok, vyšel single pro Sub-Pop, Two Beasts, který teď, jak jsme se dozvěděli, vyjde v reedici vlastně v plné délce.
Vyjde v reedici, protože má 20 minut a na single se vejde, na 7palcový single se vejde jenom 12 minut. Takže jsem musel vlastně useknout ten song a teď poprvé vyjde tedy v té plné dílce na jednostranném LPčku.
A do toho Sumak jeli turné po západním pobřeží, v srpnu pojedou východní pobřeží v Americe a taky dobrá zpráva Evropu v říjnu. A vlastně úplně jako přirozeným oslým jsme se dostali ke jménu Cageho Hayna, se kterým Sumak taky nahráli nějakou hudbu a vydali už dříve a vydají i novou desku a bavili jsme se o tom, jak spolu i koncertovali vlastně a jak jiná byla ta zkušenost naživo oproti tomu studiovému settingu.
A jak vlastně nakonec byly jako jiné i ty dva koncerty, že ten v Tokiu vlastně měl pocit, že se tolik nepovedl, protože přeci jenom ten vlastně setup na tom pódiu byl takový, že se až tak úplně neslyšeli a jelikož je to hodně postavené na improvizaci, tak tam prostě vznikaly nějaké situace, které oni se necítili úplně komfortně a ten koncert, který byl potom ve Vancouveru, tak tam si to trošku víc pohlídali a vlastně ten koncert byl skvělý a říkali, že když to potom nějaký jako zpětně reflektovali, tak i Gigi, vlastně sám říkal, že ten koncert v Tokiu se mu moc nelíbil, ale že to celé vlastně vedlo k tomu, ta konverzace, že si to tedy pohlídali v tom Vancouveru a ten koncert v tom Vancouveru byl vlastně skvělý, všichni s ním byli spokojení. Já bych se chtěl teďko si Briana zeptat na Torment and Glory, což je jeho solový projekt. So Brian, Torment and Glory. How it happened? You were sitting at home and you was like playing guitar and you were thinking about maybe it's not so bad idea to write some songs and sing and record them and put them out?
Well, I started, I guess it goes back further than that. I've always lived in apartment buildings, as an adult, and I can't have a big bass rig in my apartment and play at the volume that my bands play at. So it's when I'm at home, it's always just acoustic guitar because it's quiet and it doesn't make the neighbors mad. And so that's, I played acoustic guitar since I was a teenager for that reason. And slowly over that time, you write little riffs and you find little chord progressions that you like and finger picking patterns. And I'd always sort of thought about recording them at some point. And sometimes I did. I recorded one that was called Praise Be Man, and I shared it with my bandmates in Russian circles, and they're like, oh, that's cool. Let's put that on a record. So my little 4-track recording wound up on the end of our album, Empros. And so I just always intended to do more of that kind of thing, but never had time, and it's hard to get in a creative headspace and totally shift gears when you're always writing for a band or rehearsing for a tour and things like that. So it wasn't until COVID where I had plenty of time and it's like I should finally maybe record these songs. So
it happened, and then Surgeon House asked you to put it out.
No, sort of. It's kind of funny because when I first when I was recording the Praise Be Man song, my intent was to put it out on a friend's noise label because he had extended the invitation of doing something with me, and I was like, well, I could do a really noisy folk record, and he was into it, and I just couldn't get it to sound the way I wanted it to, so I kind of abandoned it, and Praise Be Man went on the Empress record, but the rest of this material was scrapped. And then when COVID hit, I was like, well, I can at least demo the songs at home so I have a better idea of what they would sound like if I ever wanted to go into a studio and record them. And then these home recordings kind of sounded cool to my ears, so I shared them with my friend Ben Chisholm, who plays with Chelsea Wolfe, and he mixed them for me, and he was really supportive about it, and I felt better about the material, and I was like, well, maybe I'll actually put it out, as a cassette, put it up on Bandcamp or something like that. But Ben was very encouraging and suggested that I at least send it to Sargent House, just so that they at least knew I was doing it, because he's like, Sargent House will be mad if you do it and you don't tell them, so you have to at least send it their way. So I sent it to him and was like, I'm not asking you to put it out. I'm just letting you know this is the thing I'm going to do. And, after a couple of phone calls, they're like, no, we want to put it out. And so that was sort of exciting, but then all of a sudden it made me like reevaluate all of it. It was like, oh, maybe I should have recorded it better. I don't know, but I'm pretty into it serving as like a document of a time. And so, yeah, that's how it happened. And then someone offered to put out the cassette like I had originally intended, so it all actually kind of worked out according to plan, just in a convoluted way.
Yeah.
Ještě
než Viktore to. So it was kind of like Bruce Springsteen and the Nebraska record, kind of, because also he recorded the songs, like demo songs.
Yep.
And then he sent them to the, I don't know who put it out, and he said, okay, this is the demo songs of the new record. And they said, no, this is the new record.
Yeah. It's, I always love that story about that record. Yeah. And it's actually kind of funny because coincidentally, the idea to make the noisy folk record originally happened because I was at a friend's house on St. Patrick's Day, and I was in my 20s, and we were doing the St. Patrick's Day thing where you drink way too much, and I was sleeping on his couch after this party, but everyone else went to bed, and he had a copy of Nebraska on vinyl on his turntable, and I was like, well, I'm going to listen to Nebraska before I go to bed, and I put it on the turntable, and I think he had just had it on the record player for so long without playing it that it got really, really dusty, and so it would play like a little fragment of a song, and then it would just be all this noise, and then like these beautiful melodies would kind of creep out of the noise and then, dissolve back into noise again. It was like what's that William Basinski record? The
Disintegration Loop.
Yeah, it was like that kind of thing where it just kept degrading, and then, the melody seemed to shift in the degrading, process. And it's like, man, it'd be fun to make a record like that someday, like on purpose.
And it happened.
Yeah.
Ta deska, o které jsme se teď bavili, se jmenuje We Left a Note with an Apology. Je to solovka Brianova pod tou hlavičkou Torment and Glory, která vyšla na Sargent House, teď i na kazetě na Patient Boy Records. A Brian mluvil vlastně o tom, o té evoluci té nahrávky, respektive začali jsme u toho, že vlastně tím, že bydlí od jak živa v bytovkách, tak si nemůže dovolit mít doma ten jako basový aparát a vyhulit to tak, jak prostě je zvyklý ze svých kapel. A díky tomu vlastně od jak živa hraje i na akustickou kytaru, a teď se to jaksi překlopilo do té sólové nahrávky, která právě není vůbec tak heavy jako ty
kapely. Že vlastně nikdy neměl pořádně čas se tomu věnovat, ale s covidem vlastně ten čas měl, takže si to zkusil doma nahrát, a aby aspoň věděl, jak to bude znít, a vlastně Ben Chisholm, jeho kamarád, který hraje v Chelsea Wolfe, tak mu to smíchal a vlastně trošku ho tak jako dostrkal k tomu, ať to pošle Sargent House, alespoň prostě, co na to řeknou, protože říkal, že určitě budou mad about, když to vydá někde jinde, a vlastně jim to neřekne ani, že něco takového vzniklo, že to zkusil s tím, že jim to poslal, neříkal s tím, že neříkám, že byste to měli vydat, ale jenom vám říkám, že něco takového se děje a že si pak párkrát zavolali, a vlastně nakonec to tedy vyšlo, a v Americe na vinilu, teď i v Evropě tedy na kazetě, což byl vlastně původní záměr, takže to do sebe takhle krásně zaklaplo. A já jsem pak zmínil ještě Nebrasku,
To je moc hezký příběh.
Z Bruce Springsteena, že vlastně mi to přišlo trošku podobný, že taky jako nahrál vlastně jenom nějaký demo a pak to poslal labelu, že to jsou demo songy, nové desky a label mu řekne, ne, to je nová deska a Brian tam na to vlastně reagoval, že když mu bylo 20 a opili se někde na Den svatého Patrika, tak potom, že nešli spát, že si pustí teda Nebrasku jako na vinilu, ale vlastně to měli na tom gramofonu tak dlouho, že se jim to zaprášilo v té míře, že když to fakt pak pustili, tak ten Prach tam vytvořil takový vlastně noizový zvuky, kterýho byly propletený ty melodie, které na té desce jsou a že vlastně tehdy poprvé ho možná napadlo, že by nebylo špatný dělat folkový rekord, jakoby folkovou nahrávku, která bude mít vlastně ty atributy toho noizu a že to vlastně tak krásně jako doplnilo vlastně ten příběh.
Tak. We are sort of running out of time, but there is one thing I wanted to ask, I couldn't resist asking, related to Botch. You, as is known, will be re-releasing your back catalogue, and the information got a number of fans on their feet. And despite you were explicit about this, about that this is not a reunion, by all means, I was wondering whether there are any bands of favorites of yours that you would share the fans' sentiment towards, like bands that are not active but you wish were active and played live again.
I would love to see His Hero Is Gone play again. That's the, most reunions bands. It's funny because if it's a band I'm really excited about that I loved back in the day, then it's like, oh, they're playing again. That's great. But if it's not a band I cared about, then I'm always like, oh, that's just a cash grab, like, cynical about it when it's really just a matter of taste. So, His Hero Is Gone would be great to see. I only got to see him once, and when they played, Yannick, their guitar player, was really sick, so they had to play as a 3-piece. So it wasn't like the full band. So to see them as a full band would be exciting. I don't know. I'm sure there's a bunch of other random ones, but that's always the one in the back of my mind. It's like, well, sometimes I'm a little jaded, I'm a little cynical about reunions, but I would be very pumped to see His Hero Is Gone again.
In some basement.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm actually pretty excited for the Dead Guy reunion. I would kind of like to see that, but they're playing like a lot of festival things, and it's like I don't want to see them at a festival. I want to see them where I would have seen them in 1995. So.
Yeah.
By the way, which of your bands that you were a part of or are a part of would you consider the most optimistic in terms of sound and the aesthetics?
I don't know.
The hardest question at the end.
Yeah, I guess none of them are very optimistic, but probably Torment and Glory, just because it's at least not like all angry. I feel like there's a part of that was trying to be hopeful about the future and, acknowledging the bad things in the past, but promising for the future.
My míříme do finále, bavili jsme se o Botch a o tom, že budou vydávat znovu své staré desky a dohromady se nedávají, ale jsou i kapely, ke kterým vlastně Brian cítí něco podobného jako fanoušci k Botch, jmenovitě His Hero Is Gone, je kapela, kterou by si dokázal představit, nebo by chtěl vidět znovu koncertovat a to je všechno z dnešních modelářů.
Nejvíc optimistická kapela z těch všech jeho určitě Torment and Glory, protože říkal,
aspoň špetka naděje.
Aspoň špetka naděje.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.